Hello, everyone. This is your host, Susan Rosen. And my guest today is Margo Arrowsmith. And I forgot to ask you where that name comes from, because that's a great name, Arrowsmith.
I
Um,
love
and we're going to be talking about retirement years and the different. Well, let's see. I'll just read her intro. By the way, welcome. And I,
welcome.
I will read her intro, and that will, I think, give you a really good feel for what she does and what we're going to talk about. So Margo is an LCSW, which is a licensed
Clinical.
something. Clinical social worker. Okay, didn't know what the C was. Is a therapist in practice for more than 40 years. And in recent years, she has focused primarily on working with people who want to age in the most positive ways, which I will interject, we all should and do. This includes working on their current situations and problems, as well as resolving issues from their past that are hindering a joyous life. She is an expert on housing options for retirement and is devoted to teaching people how to discover what they really want, to sort out all the confusion from well-meaning people as well as marketers, and then helping them to find the best situation among those choices. She is the author of the book, You Can Keep Your Parents Home, Keep Your Life and Job, Save Your Fortune and Sanity. Boy, you really like to promise a lot of things, don't you?
I can guarantee it.
Available on Amazon, and we'll put a link to it in the show notes so everybody can find it easily, as well as the course, Your Perfect Retirement Living, at yourperfectretirementliving.com. And I'll put that in there as well.
Thank you.
And at 75, she enjoys a full-time practice as well as community involvement. She lives in Raleigh, North Carolina, with Xander and Willow, her two dogs, and is the proud grandmother to Nico and Catalina.
Yeah.
How
Hi.
exciting.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, welcome. This is it's such an important subject.
Yeah.
And I think, which is why I wanted you to come on. But I think that there are a lot of people who listen to the show who are probably thinking, well, I don't need to worry about that. I'm only 50 years old, or I'm not quite 50, or whatever. And you know what? That's when you need it.
That's exactly
because that's when your parents.
What happens is there's a lot of belief out there that partly assumes that everybody's going to go, for instance, into senior housing, which is fine, by the way, if that's the best for you. There's a lot of marketing around it, and a lot of the marketing is based in fear tactics. And they don't just make you afraid, they work really hard on making your children afraid of what's going to happen if you don't. So yes, 50, 55, it's never too late to do it, but 50 to 55 is a great time to start, because then one of the things I do in my course is that the first part of it is really teaching you how to know what it is that you really want. I've got all these points that I hit so that you know what it is you really want in retirement. And will any of these places, they all make promises, but will any of these places fulfill them? And even if they do fulfill them, how to make sure that they fulfill them. So that's a big part of the course. And then, of course, in talking about what the options are, and I go through options from staying at home to 55 plus living, to assisted living, to, and believe it or not, this is really true, people who retire to live on cruise ships their whole life. There's a way to do that. So I go through all of the options. And a matter of fact, since I've done the course, I've learned of other options. So I keep adding things to the course. But once you've decided which category you want, how to make sure that you're in because again, even among 55 plus housing, there's myriad of different options and a myriad of different companies, how to find out how to ask questions, how to find out that what they're promising you is true, how to make
Mhm.
sure that you get what you promised. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you need to know. And the other added bonus is that people who belong to the course uh, can belong to a community that's on Facebook. It's a private
Mm.
community on Facebook. They can
Uh-huh.
go, I pop in so they can ask me questions, of course, but they can also ask each other questions. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
I was at this place and this bar, and I asked this question and they told me this. Did that ever happen to you? You know, and so that people can
Yeah.
communicate back and forth. You know, Susan, last week I was tuned into LinkedIn, which a lot of the people who should be getting this course go to LinkedIn. So, you know, every once in a while, some live thing will pop up. I don't even know how I got it, but it was two charming young women. One of them was selling a program to teach people how to use Facebook, not Facebook, email marketing. Great. The other
Okay.
one was one who marketed senior communities.
Ah.
And there were a couple things that popped out. It really just like, oh my God, I can't believe they're being this open about it. And what one said was, like, for instance, you know, you want to know that when you're setting up a tour, because you know anybody who is going to go any place should tour first, obviously. When you're setting up a
Yeah.
tour, you want to keep the people that come limited. Like, for instance, what if somebody brings their sister and their sister asks too many questions? I would,
Oh my God.
oh my God.
Hire that sister.
Higher that's yeah, well, I'll tell you what I do in my course is I teach people not only how to ask too many questions, but how to ask even more questions than that. Because
Yeah.
how to ask
Yeah.
questions you never thought about asking.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
then
bring some, and always make sure you bring somebody else with you because they're going to see things that you don't see.
well, I did a little undercover work when I was doing the course. So in my well, I undercover work. I call it research, but it was
Yeah.
undercover work. But I
Yeah.
went to a CCRC, that's a continuous care retirement community, and I went to one pre- pretending. I got to confess, I wasn't totally upfront that I was interested in living there. And I know a couple of because I actually had a client that was in the higher level of nursing care there, so I know a couple of the things
Wow.
that she told me weren't true. By the way, um, I don't think she was lying to me. She may have even believed that it was true, but I knew it wasn't true. Like for she said, in order to get into higher level of nursing, you have to start at independent living where there's nothing wrong with you and you really don't need to be here. She didn't say that part. Well,
Yeah.
I my my patient that was in a higher level of nursing went in at higher level of nursing. So I knew that wasn't true. Again, she may have thought it was true, but it wasn't. But the last thing she said to me, because this is one of the tactics. The last thing she said to me was, you know, the best thing you can do for your children is to come here. Of course, with the intimation that if you don't come here, your children just will be so worried and so on. And number one, that's not true because they don't take away all the worries from the children. It but just to know those things, and this is another thing that I do in my course. I do not try and influence anybody to pick anything because I don't know who you are. I don't know who they are. That's why I teach them to each figure out what it is that they want and why they want it.
Mm.
Uh, I, I work with this woman. She's one of my clients. She's 83 now. I don't know. In the last since I've known her, every winter, she, and I have to be careful because I don't want to give too much any information that would be
Hmm.
recognized.
Yeah.
I'll get broad. But in the last 3 years that I've known her, three times a year, she goes to a very difficult place and um does a very dangerous and difficult sport. Okay. And
Hmm.
when I remind her of that, by the way, she's like, "Oh yeah, but I don't do as much as I used to do." I'm like, "Well, golly gee." Um, but one day she got COVID. This was recently. So she got COVID. She knew what to do. She went right to her doctor. The doctor gave her the medicine so that she had it for just a
Right.
short period of time. She was
Hmm.
better. During that period, she got scared. She got scared about what her children would
Uh,
have to do. So the next thing you know, while she's homesick, she's on the computer looking
oh
up
no.
RCs. And the next time I saw her, she's like, "Oh, I don't know, maybe I better look into this." And I kind of held my breath because I didn't want to jump. pounds too quickly. And by the next time I saw her, she had forgotten. But what if during that period she had made an appointment
Oh my
and
God, what if she had signed something? Ugh,
she would have
yeah,
gone there in fear and
yeah.
anything, and she wouldn't have asked questions. And this happens to all of us, by the way. We get scared. And
Mhm,
again,
mhm, yeah.
CCRCs are wonderful for some people,
Mhm.
but it wouldn't have been good for her because it would have been a lot of
Mm.
money down the drain that she didn't need to spend.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and they always make it sound like it's so wonderful. "Oh, there's so much to do around here, and there's so many people you could become friends with, and da, 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 da,"
well,
right?
if your criteria, yes, and there are people who
Yeah,
go there and make fun. If your criteria, however, is that just because we're all 70 years old, we should be friends, great.
yeah, yeah. No, that's not.
Not true. That's not true. And I will say this, and I do not mention it in the course. I have a personal bias that we need to be
Mhm.
around people of all different ages. All of us do.
Oh,
Young
for
people need to
sure.
be around old people and old. I mean, I think one of
Yeah,
the biggest ills we have in our society today is that young people don't see old people very much because too many of them are tucked away.
yeah.
Um, but uh, this one CCRC that I have a client in, and I'll tell her story. But first, I want to tell the story of her neighbor. Her neighbor went in, and this is why you need to ask a lot of questions and get it in writing. Her neighbor went in, and she told them at the beginning. She says, and this is a healthy woman. She
Mhm.
says, but I'm a vegetarian, and this is how I eat. And they're like, oh, no problem, no problem. So she's there about a year, and suddenly they realize she's eating an awful lot of fresh fruit in the morning. They took her into the office and had her talk with her about all the fresh fruit she was eating in the morning.
Yeah,
This is a
and what
woman
was
who
wrong
paid
with that?
thousands of dollars to even get in and is paying five to $6,000 every month. Well, she said, too bad. You told me I could eat a vegetarian diet. This is what I eat. I'm going to continue eating it. So what they did, they changed the whole eating program for everybody to a point system. So you get fruit points and you're only allowed X amount. And so not only affected her, but affects everybody. But that was the only. So what she could have done when she had the talk about what she liked to eat, what she could have done was to say, I want that in writing. And I want it in writing that I can eat whatever I want. Now, if they had said, oh, we don't do that, well, then she could have said, okay, I'll go
I'll find
someplace.
someplace else. Yep,
Exactly. Exactly.
yep,
They will tell
yep.
you that there's people clamoring to get in. There's an awful lot of marketing being done. So they're not, but anyway. But
Oh, yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of us. I know there's a lot of us, right? I mean, there's the baby boomers. There's a lot of us. I'm on the tail end, but
yeah,
you
I'm at
know,
the beginning.
but that doesn't mean that we don't get as good a service as everybody else did.
Well, what they're worried about is this place is opening up a new branch, and they're already partly because of
Ah,
COVID, partly because everybody's understaffed these days.
oh yes,
Uh,
oh
opening a new
yes.
branch, and these people have to pay like $900,000 deposit to get in the door. And they're very understaffed, and everybody's so concerned because if they're having a hard time staffing now, what's going to happen when all these high ticket people are there? What's going to happen? Well,
Yeah,
anyway, the woman that I know the closest, and they had saved, close to $2 million. They were doing okay, but several years ago, they owned a house in town and they had another house at the beach. They have a nice life. Well, her husband had this really bizarre thing where he suddenly his intestines suddenly started massively bleeding. Are we there?
yes,
Can you hear me?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Suddenly I can't see you, but anyway, her husband started massively bleeding, which scared them to death. They had put down a very small deposit and they thought, you know what? We'd better move now while we can, because they were told that unless you're in perfect health, you can't get in. So they moved in. Well, 10 years later, and they've been paying all this time, her husband has developed Alzheimer's.
Oh my God.
And what she's afraid of is because if they decide that he can no longer be an independent living, that he has to go to memory care, they can make them go. And suddenly their monthly costs will go from 5,000 to 20,000. And the money that they have, which sounded like an awful lot, will not last that long.
No, not these days.
People are told when they go in, well, we'll keep you your whole life. That's why people go there. She can't find it written down anywhere. Now, it might be true, it might be true that they will do that, but she can't find it written down anywhere. And she's afraid to bring it to their attention because she's afraid they'll make her husband go to memory care.
Yeah.
Um, and even, I mean, so even if it is true, she can't find it written down anywhere. So again, what I suggest to people, and this is even if you're having somebody come to your house to fit it, with grab bars, don't do anything about the rest of your life until you have the promises in writing. Hello?
Hello, I'm here.
Okay. I'm just looking at a blank screen and I didn't hear you, so I wanted to make sure.
Oh, okay. Oh,
There's a lot of
oh,
tips
okay.
like that in my course, so
Yeah,
well worth doing.
yeah, yeah. Oh no, absolutely, absolutely. Um, yeah, I don't know, it's scary, and I think people should be scared,
Yes.
because if you're scared, you will ask more questions, and you will not,
That
should be at least
that's a really
that.
good point. Sometimes I worry that I'm also doing scare tactics, but my scare tactics are to keep them from making a mistake. I'm not trying to
Yeah,
scare them into doing something that they may not want to do.
okay, but aren't they related?
Well, yeah, but
You have
well,
a
they're related.
different, you have a different reason, but from
Exactly,
their point of view, they're related.
exactly.
Yeah.
Again, there, like that conversation of the two young women that I overheard.
Mhm.
I mean, their point is, make sure that they know all the things that could go wrong if they don't come here, which basically they're doing it, and I'm not saying they're bad people, but they're doing it because they want you to go there. I'm doing it.
It's a business.
It's a business. It's a profit make, and there's a lot of money in senior housing. But I'm doing it because I want to make sure that you're going to be
Right.
in the place that you want to be in, that's going to make you happy, and that you're going to be able to afford the rest of your
Of
life.
course.
And that's the
Of
difference.
course. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's why you're here and they're in there.
Yes.
Why they're in a building trying to convince people to come and live with them.
Yeah. But again, even like
Yeah.
for 55 plus, I mean, there are a lot of lovely, you know,
Yes. Oh, yeah.
settlements where people go, and that everybody's over 55 and all that. And there are a lot of people. Matter of fact, my friend who I was just telling you about, who's doing the uh she's totally retired. She's not working anymore, but she's working, doing a lot of political work, trying to get the
Mm.
RA pass, which still exists. It's still alive, folks.
Yeah,
But
I know.
but she
Don't start me on that. Yeah.
well, but she lives in a 55 plus housing unit, but
Uh-huh.
she's okay. So it could be lovely for some people, but again, I tell you what questions to ask. For example, are kids allowed in the swimming pool? Now, some people
Right.
that want
Yes.
that because their grandchildren, it's a draw to get their grandchildren there. Other people are like, I don't want any little kids in my. You need to ask these questions.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, you need to know what questions to ask. And again,
Don't
even
assume
don't say
anything.
anything, and whatever they promise you, get it in writing and
Hmm.
have your look it over. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. No, some of those, I my parents many decades ago um used to have, they had the house that they're living in. I don't know if I think my father may still even been working or working part-time. And then they had bought a little townhouse kind of thing
Mhm.
out in Palm Springs, I think, someplace like that. And that was wonderful. They loved it. Everything it was just like having it really did work, just like if you were living in a condo
Mhm.
kind of thing, where everybody, you pay for the pool, you pay for all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't any different. They just wanted people to be over a certain age. That was it, you
Exactly.
know.
But even then,
But they've changed.
understand, do you want to live because it's basically segregated housing. Do you, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
great if that's what you want.
yeah,
But understand that that's what you're getting. And
yeah,
then that gets back to the first part of the course, is make sure that you understand what that means, and that that's what you want, that you want to live in
yeah,
segregated. Then great. But know what you want, because
yeah.
no, I once was at meeting with business people, get together and network. And this guy, his job was, he had a business that what he did was when people want assisted living, he helps them find the right place. Great. So I said to him, great. I mean, that's wonderful because there are so many, you can't visit them all. It's good to have somebody who knows. By the way, you don't want to hire one of those that you don't pay, because if you're not paying, somebody's paying them. You want them to be working for you, not for wherever you're going to go. That's just a little hint there, folks. But even at that, I looked at him. I said, that's wonderful. I said, what do you do to make sure that assisted living is really the best thing for this person? And he looked at me like I had just grown a third head. It was like, huh? Why would I ask that? Well, that's what we help you do at the course. We help you really figure it out. And again, the earlier it's never too late, unless you've given somebody $500,000 to live in a CCRC. It's not too late. But
and you're already living there. Yeah.
Excuse me, but starting at an earlier age to figure that out, so that when people start coming at you, and they do, believe me, they do, that you're secure in what you want.
Yeah. So one of the things that just came into my brain. So what about ARP? Because they're one of those organizations, and that's one of the things they talk about a lot as well, is senior.
They're wonderful. I like them. I actually I had a woman who was unjustly, I believe, put into guardianship. Her ex-husband put her into guardianship, and I'm not going to go into that. It was a long story. But so I wrote ARP a letter, AARP, I assume was who you're talking about. I wrote the letter.
Yeah.
Liked what I had to say, and they had me write a letter because they wanted to put me on the committee for people who were working on guardianship issues, and they really exist. Because well, that's a whole other conversation. But anyway,
yeah.
And these were young kids and by young kids I mean 20s and 30s. They were young kids, which is great. I loved that they were working at AARP, and they really said what I said. But when they passed it on to the people above them, they're like, well, what we're really on is people with disabilities, and people like younger people with disabilities, which is, again, is fine. That needs, I've worked in plenty of places like that needs help too, but it wasn't quite what I want to do. And so my concern is that it's a wonderful organization. They do amazing things. I'm a longtime member. I will always be a member. I will do what I can for them. However, they're also a big corporation. They're a good corporation, but they have a lot of interests. They have a lot of pots, and they don't specifically get down, to my knowledge, and deal with the kinds of things that I deal with in the course.
That's.
I think everybody should get all the information they can from everybody. By all means, they are a good group.
Yeah. Well, maybe they would like to offer your course.
Well, that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. I would love to have.
Well, I mean, if you haven't found anything on their site that does, offers the same kind of information,
Susan, you give me a good idea. I'll have to look into that with the people that are working with me. I'll have to look into that. I like that.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's so important, and I have no doubt that they think it's important.
I'm sure they do.
So,
and everybody knows that, again. Well, it's like in 1965, my mother, my grandfather had been taking care of grandma after she had her stroke, and then he was getting sick. So my mother found this little apartment, beautiful, cute. I mean, it wasn't beautiful, cute little apartment for them near to where their business was. But it just got to be too much, so she had to put them somewhere. And I remember when I saw it, I was horrified. But that's the best there was in 1965. There was a need. There was a huge need. But what's happened is, and that's the wonders of capitalism. There and also, by the way, if there had been home health services back then, Mom could have kept them at home. But there wasn't that either. None of that stuff existed.
Yeah.
Great, it's wonderful. It's all starting. However, it's also become a big business. So that they're now building more than probably was needed. And since they're building more than was needed, they have to convince more people that they need it. So it's kind
Yeah.
of it started out as this boon, this wonderful thing for people who needed it, and it's now turned into something where we need to convince everybody that they need it.
Yeah.
And again, it's not for everybody. It's for a lot of people. It's not for everybody.
Yeah. 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 Oh no, exactly. And it's you know, the I think a lot of the baby boomers can kind of take responsibility for them building all this stuff because we were the big hump coming through the camel, right? And
Exactly.
it's starting to move down.
And you know, for people who don't understand that big hump, when I was in grade school, the class before me and all the classes before me forever had one group of first graders, and there were like maybe 20 kids in the class. That had been that way for decades. Suddenly, when my class went into the first grade, they needed two classes of 30 kids each. That it was literally, that's why we're called the baby boomers.
Yeah,
It was literally
that's
that
right.
dramatic. And so
Yeah.
now they're saying, oh, all these baby boomers are coming. They're all retiring. Well, the other issue is that we're also a lot healthier than the people before us were.
Yeah.
Actually, while there's more of us, we're less likely to have care. Um, so, you know, that's another issue. But
Right, right. But nobody looks at that. They just look at the numbers
they just
hitting
look at
the
the numbers
age.
and think this is a market. And
Yep,
how do we
that's right.
sell to, just like those two young women in their conversation? Well, you don't let them bring anybody that's going to ask questions.
Yeah,
And again, I'm not telling anybody not to go there. Just ask questions. Ask a lot and
yeah,
then ask some more.
yeah. Just have a little bit of cynicism in
Yes,
everything that you hear and read, and don't sign anything
exactly.
ever if you haven't
Ex-
had it checked out.
If you haven't
Yes.
had check, get it in writing and check it out. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Oh no, exactly. Ah, okay. Well, we should probably start wrapping up here. Um, so I'll put all the information in the show notes. What I don't know, you have so many interesting questions on here and topics that you can discuss. So what do you think? I mean, other than what we've kind of talked about, right? Which I love the detail that you've given. I will also say that what you're saying, people should use that not just for when you're looking at retirement homes, but for life and
For life,
anybody who wants your money for anything.
for anything.
So that we'll just we'll just put
I
that out
totally
there.
agree. And then to also know that when you're reaching, you know, 60, 65, uh, they see is they see a lot of dollars, and they
They
really do come
do,
after. They really do come
and they
in very
get
in
very
some very
excited.
subtle ways. Like even an article that you see in a magazine about how I was talking to a woman the other day, and she said, you know, 12% of people will have Alzheimer's. That's a statistic, and it's a statistic is put out by the Alzheimer's Association. I want to say I love the Alzheimer's Association. It's a terrible disease. They do good things. However, they present their statistics to get money, which I want everybody to give them money. So I said to her, well, yeah, in the ages between 90 and 100, first place, 12% is not that big of it. It's not that much. Number one,
Mhm.
it's
Okay.
certainly a lot less than people who are going to get cancer or Parkinson's even, but
Mm.
that's for people 90 and over. When you're 70 and 80, the percentage goes way down. I understand why the Parkinson's or the Alzheimer's Association does it. And again, I want everybody to give money to them. But you have to learn how to read statistics too, because anybody,
Yes.
I mean, I probably do it too. It's a
Mhm.
human
Okay.
nature thing. When we see statistics, we read them the way we want to read them.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
what I always say, you know, if Jeff Bezos were to walk into the room that I'm in right now, the median wealth would be $29 billion.
Yeah.
That's a fact. It's a true statistic. However, nobody's going to sell me a 47-bedroom mansion based on that statistic, right? So don't look at 12% of people will get Alzheimer's and think suddenly you have to go into a
Yeah.
CCRC, because number one, it's only at the age of 90 that even the 12% kicks in. And again, at that very wealthy place that I told you about, the people lined up in chairs,
Right.
I used to also go to a place just like it, only it was for Medicaid people. And
Uh,
I used to have to go when I was going to go see somebody. I have to go look for them because if they could stay in their bed and watch TV if they wanted to, or they'd put them in wheelchairs and they'd walk around the place. Sounds like chaos, but it wasn't. And I have
mm,
to tell you, I don't care how much money I have. If I had to choose between that very expensive one and the Medicaid one, I'd go to the Medicaid one because those people had some freedom. They weren't plunked in
yeah.
front of a nurse's station all day staring at, or hurting their necks by having to sleep with their
Oh,
chest on
yeah.
their chins on their chest. So
Yeah.
again, that's another thing you want to look at. It's like well, there's so much to know. There's so much to know,
Yeah.
and I
Oh,
really
yeah.
want people and be in the course because so that we can have those discussions and people can
Hmm.
come and say, I saw this. What does it mean? Uh,
Yeah.
this is what I think I want, but am I thinking, I need a little bit of help.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's, yeah. I think as human beings, our first reaction is always to to pretend like it's not there,
Hmm.
um, and then to believe anything that anybody tells us.
It goes from denial to panic. What they
Yeah.
used to say, if a car would go from 0 to 60, we go from denial to panic in 60. Just like boom, just like that. And that's not,
Yeah.
I mean, it's human. We do it a lot, but that's not the way to live a life. And it's certainly not the way to
Yeah.
make decisions about the rest of your life.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh no, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why we all need to hear this and know this and know where we can go to get educated
Yeah.
so that we don't end up with our parents or ourselves in a situation that is just not acceptable. So, okay, now you froze. I think I lost you now. Okay, well, I will go ahead and just say that my usual, this is not medical advice, and I will see everybody next week.